It started on a summer afternoon. I was playing my Xbox until I noticed out of my peripheral vision that the mailman had arrived and put something in my mailbox, as usual. I paused my game to check what it was. The only thing in there was a manila envelope, to which I opened. It only contained a CD case and a note. I took it inside. I looked at the note first and realized it was from my friend Kyle, who I hadn't heard from in some time. However, the handwriting looked badly written, scratchy, and was difficult to read in areas, as if he was writing it in a hurry or some kind of distress. This is what he wrote. "Tom, I can't take it anymore. I had to get rid of this thing somehow before it was too late. I can't do it, but maybe you can. You have to. He's after me. And if you don't destroy this CD, he'll come after you too. I don't have time to tell you everything. I have to get this message out fast. Please, Tom, destroy this godforsaken disc. Destroy it, and you'll destroy him. Don't play it. It's what he wants. Just destroy it. Please. Kyle." I reread the note several times. I've never known Kyle to be this erratic in his behavior. I texted him to see what was going on, but never got a response. He didn't pick up his phone either. I checked some of the messaging sites we both used, but he was offline. I looked at the disc, and it seemed like an ordinary writable CD, except for the label written in black marker. Sonic.exe. Kyle wasn't really into burning his own CDs, meaning that he must have gotten it from someone else. When I saw Sonic on the label, it piqued my curiosity, as I was a pretty big fan of the character. I booted up my computer, put the disc in the CD drive, looked over the files. There was only a single item, which shared the same title as on the label, Sonic.exe. I first scanned it with my antivirus to make sure I wasn't about to give myself malware or anything else. After the scan came back clean, I installed the game. It only took a minute or so to install. Given the file size was relatively small, I assumed this was one of the retro titles. When the title screen popped up, I was a bit surprised to see that it was the original Sonic game from the Genesis. When I hit enter to start the game, I caught the screen flicker, cutting to an image that, despite it lasting for only a second, I was able to make out a few things about it. The sky had darkened, the title emblem was rusted and ruined, and the water had turned red, like blood. But the strangest thing was in that second-long frame, Sonic himself. His eyes were pitch black and bleeding, with two glowing red dots in the center. His smile had stretched wider, up to the edge of his face. I was thrown off by this. However, I figured that it was just a glitch, given that this was obviously a fan-made port. Unstable elements were to be expected. After it cut to black, it stayed like that for about 10 seconds or so. Then something else happened. The save file select screen from Sonic 3 popped up. Not only was this obviously a fan port, they seem to have done a ROM hack of it as well, combining several elements from different Sonic titles, and, as I'd soon find out, from other games as well. The background to the menu was the dark, cloudy sky of the bad Stardust Speedway level from Sonic CD. And there's only 3 save files. The music was the creepy Caverns of Winter music from Earthbound. However, it seemed to have been reversed. The image for the save file, where you see a preview of the level you're on, was just red static for all 3 files. What intrigued me more was the character select. It showed only Tails, Knuckles, and, to my surprise, Dr. Robotnik. I'd never played a ROM hack before, so naturally all these changes were taking me off guard. I picked file 1 and chose Tails. The game froze for about 5 seconds, and I heard a creepy, distorted laugh. It sounded like it could have been the Kefka character from Final Fantasy, before cutting to black. The screen stayed black for about 10 seconds or more. Then it showed the typical level title, except the simplistic shapes were different shades of red. The text showed only Hill, Act 1. The screen faded in, and the level title vanished, revealing Tails in the Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1. At least that much was consistent. The music was different, though. It sounded like a peaceful melody in reverse. I started playing. The first oddity was that as Tails was running through the level, there was nothing but flat ground and a few trees for a good 5 minutes. That was when the peaceful music started to pitch down into slow, deep tones as I continued. I saw something which caused me to stop. It's one of those small animals lying dead on the ground, bleeding. Tails had a shocked and saddened look on his face that I've never seen him have in any of the other retro titles. I moved him along, but he kept that worried look on his face. As I continued moving, I saw more dead creatures. Tails moved past them, looking more and more worried as the music lowered. Bodies didn't stop appearing. I was shocked to see this gruesome sight. It looked like somebody had taken out their sadistic fantasies on these creatures. The squirrel was hanged on a tree with what appeared to be his entrails hanging out. A rabbit had all 4 of his limbs torn off, and a duck had his eyes gouged out and his throat slit. Despite the 16-bit nature of this gore, I was more than off-put by the scene. Apparently, so was Tails. After a few more seconds, there were no more animals, and the music seemed to have stopped. After the music ceased, I was running Tails up a hill when he halted himself, despite me keeping the right arrow key pressed. Sonic was there, on the other side of the screen, with his back against Tails, his eyes closed. Tails looked happy to see Sonic, but his smile faltered, quickly noticing that Sonic wasn't responding to him, if not intentionally ignoring Tails' presence. The two-tailed fox walked slowly towards Sonic, without my input telling me that this had to be a cutscene. There was a sense of dread I began to have as Tails walked closer to Sonic. I felt that Tails was in danger. I heard faint static growing louder as he was only a few inches away from Sonic and stopped. Tails stuck his hand out to touch him. That foreboding feeling in my gut was growing stronger, and I felt the urge to try and control Tails, to move him away from the blue hedgehog. But my inputs did nothing. Suddenly, in a split second, I saw Sonic's eyes open. They were black with those red glowing dots, just like that title image. No, there wasn't a smile. When that happened, the screen turned black, and the static sound that had been present since Sonic was on screen ceased. It stayed black for a few seconds, and then white text appeared, forming a message. Do you want to play with me? Something about this ROM hack was getting to me. I didn't want to continue with the game, but my curiosity got the better of me. I hit enter. I was taken to a different level, with the title now saying, Hide and Seek. This time, I was at the Angel Island level from Sonic 3. But everything was burning. Tails looked as though he was scared out of his wits this time. He actually looked at the camera, made frantic gestures, as if he wanted to get out of the area he was in as fast as possible. I pressed down on the arrow key as hard as I could, getting Tails up to speed. A distorted version of the theme for when you meet Shadow at the Ark from Sonic Adventures 2 was playing. I continued to run Tails through the devastated forest, helping him escape from whatever he was trying to run from. Then, I heard that creepy laugh again. That awful Kefka laugh. Only a few seconds later, I started seeing flashes of Sonic popping up everywhere on the screen. Once again, with those black and red eyes. Music changed to that suspenseful drowning loop as I could see Sonic behind Tails, slowly gaining on him. But Sonic wasn't running. He was flying. He had a deranged-looking grin on his face. He looked as though he was enjoying the torment he was giving Tails as he gained on him. Suddenly, Tails tripped. Another cutscene. Music stopped, and Sonic vanished. Tails laid there and started crying. The scene was upsetting to watch. It wasn't the comic mischief these games were known for. Even with the limited graphics, there was something more to it. Something that conveyed the emotions. Sonic appeared right in front of him. Tails looked up in horror. Blood started to come down from those blackened eyes of Sonic's. A grin slowly grew from his face as he looked down at the horrified fox. In a split second, Sonic lunged at Tails, right before the screen went black. There was a loud, screeching noise that only lasted a few seconds. The text returned. only this time it said, "You're too slow. Wanna try again?" And then that god-awful laugh came with it. I was utterly confused by what just happened. Did Sonic murder Tails? Whoever made this ROM hack was obviously trying to upset anyone who played it. They did a damn good job of that. I shook it off as I was brought back to the character select screen. The save file that had Tails was different. He was no longer in the box itself, but in the TV screen, which was flickering with that red static. Tails' expression was disgusting. His eyes were now black and bleeding. His orange fur had gone black. He had an expression of anguish on his face. I tried to ignore it as I picked Knuckles next. A laugh came again, and the screen cut to black. This time, Level said, "You can't run." I knew this was a ROM hack, but what was its intentions? Did the creator, whoever they were they trying to make some kind of horror version of Sonic? Was it just some kind of twisted joke? The next level looked much different. It had the ground of the scrap brain zone. The sky background looked like the main menu. It had the dark reddish cloudy sky, but it was the music that creeped me out the most. It sounded like Gygas's theme, right after you beat Pokey and Earthbound. I also noticed that Knuckles looked afraid, similar to Tails. More accurately, he looked a bit unnerved. He ran down the straight pathway in this dark level, and as he did, the screen started to flicker. Red static broke up the screen a couple of times. Then that maddening laugh came again. After a few seconds of running, I noticed several bloodstains on the metallic ground. I felt a growing sense of dread again, thinking something horrible was going to happen to Knuckles. He looked nauseated walking down this blood-stained road, but I still kept him going. Suddenly, as Knuckles ran, Sonic appeared right in front of him, along with red static. The screen glitched out, showing nothing but black, with text saying, "Found you." Unlike with Tails, Sonic found Knuckles almost immediately. Red static came again. Then I was back to the level. Knuckles looked like he was panicking, but Sonic was nowhere to be found. Was this some kind of boss battle with Sonic? If it was, how was I supposed to defeat him? Sonic appeared right behind Knuckles in a pixelated black smoke. I made Knuckles turn and then punch Sonic, but he vanished in the same smoke before I could even land a hit. That laugh triggered again. Then once more, Sonic appeared behind Knuckles. I tried to attack, but he just as well vanished. Knuckles was panicking worse than before, and even I was feeling it. Sonic was toying with us. Another cutscene played as Knuckles fell to his knees, clutched his head, sobbing. I could feel his agony. Then, in a split second, Sonic lunged at Knuckles. The screen went black, with another distorted screeching noise. Another text message appeared. So many souls to play with, so little time. Would you agree? What was going on? What was this game supposed to be? I started to think Sonic was actually trying to talk to me through the game. But I knew this was just some attempt by the creator to scare me, which might have been working. I was brought back to the main menu. This time, the second file box had Knuckles in the TV screen. His red fur had darkened to a reddish gray. His dreadlocks were dripping with blood, and his eyes were black and bleeding too. He had a look of sadness on his face. A peculiar thought came to me at that moment. That those are the actual characters. Real, living, feeling beings, trapped in those TV screens on the save files. Maybe it was the reason I could feel their emotional state as clearly as I could. I closed out the game and took a break. Even though I had only played it for maybe 10 minutes, I felt exhausted, emotionally drained. I took a nap. I wish I hadn't. A nightmare came to me in that short time. I was in pitch black darkness, save for the limited circle of light I was under. A lamp high above my head, only allowing me to see my body and the floor immediately around me. A sound came from all directions. At first, it sounded like a muffled laughter. However, the breaks in the sound made it more clear what it was. I realized it was crying. Even though I could not see anything, I knew instinctually it was the cries of Knuckles and Tails. They began uttering pleas. Help us. Why did you give us to him? Run away before he gets you too. Their cries died out as I heard the laugh from the game, which I knew all too well what that meant.
You are a lot of fun to play with, just like your friend, though he didn't last long.
I was scared, looking around for the source of the voice.
Won't be long now until you join him and all the others.
Then, I saw him, walking toward me, flickering in and out in several directions, red static in my vision.
You can't run. You are in my world now, just like the others.
In an instant, he grabbed me, and I was face to face with his bleeding, black and red-eyed, grinning face. I woke up with a fright. I was sweating profusely. My heart was pounding against my chest. I could taste the adrenaline in my mouth. Hours passed, and all I could think about was that game. I've never been one for nightmares, let alone from some retro game. How did it have such a sharp and sudden effect on me? I decided to continue playing it. I wanted to see if there was some kind of ending to this. There was actually a way to beat it. I woke my computer, booted up the game, and selected Robotnik next. Felt odd playing as Robotnik. Level title appeared again. This time it didn't seem to have one. Only 3 dots. I was in some kind of hallway, which didn't seem to match any of the classic Sonic games, though it was still in the 16-bit art style. The floor was shiny and checkered. The walls were dark grayish purple, with animated candles, a few dark bloodstains here and there. There's a dark red curtain hanging above the top part of the screen. Every few seconds, that red curtain swayed very slowly. Music was oddly pleasant, given the previous levels. The piano playing a sad yet peaceful song. Robotnik didn't look entirely nervous, like Tails and Knuckles did. Instead, he wore a suspicious look on his face, as if he was just a bit paranoid. He did a little animation when I left him standing. He turned his head to the left, then to the right, at least twice, then shrugged at me, as if he had no idea where he was or what was going on. Even though I had that feeling of dread, knowing what was going to happen, I had Robotnik continue onward. He did his usual running animation, the one he does when you've beaten him at the end of a classic Sonic game. You chase him. Then, I stopped at a long flight of stairs, leading downward. Now, I was nervous. Even the character seemed unsure of himself. As I led him down the stairs, I noticed that the walls had gotten darker, more reddish. The red torches were now an eerie blue. Then we reached another hallway. This one was longer than the last one, or at least it felt like it. I pressed on, down another flight of stairs. This one was much longer. It took at least a full minute. Then I heard that horrid laugh again. Then the music slowly faded till it was quiet. As it did, the walls turned a darker red. The torches were a black flame now. When Robotnik came to the third hallway, I noticed he now looked thoroughly creeped out. Suddenly, Sonic appeared right in front of him, same way he did with the other two. And then, red static, which lasted for about 15 seconds. Then it showed me an unpleasant image. The image depicted a photorealistic version of Sonic, standing in the darkness. I could only see his face, while his head and torso faded into black. His details were incredibly fine. I felt like if I touched the screen, I would have felt his quills. His face. He had a sadistic smile, worse than I had ever seen. It felt demonic. Teeth were closer to daggers than anything else. They seemed to be stained red, with what looked like bits of flesh stuck in them, like he had fed on some kind of animal. His eyes were wide and black, once again oozing blood. There were two small, glowing red dots in those voids, staring right at me, as if staring through the screen into my own mind. I stared at that gruesome image for a good 30 seconds, never taking my eye off it. I felt as if he was actually looking at me, smiling at me. That face. It took no time at all for that image to sear itself into my head. Then the screen flickered with red static again, 3 times. On the third, the laugh came again, but more distorted, hellish even. It went back to the image again, except this time, there was text, distorted as well, but present. I am God. It was when I read that message, while looking at Sonic, when it hit me. I realized right there and then, this was something else. Not just some lone programmer's weird joke. Not just an experiment with hacking a game. Something was in here. Something evil. A pure evil. His victims, Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, and possibly Kyle, were just his toys. The game is a gateway into his chaotic, nightmarish world. A hell his toys are trapped in. Sonic lunged at the screen, screeching loudly with his mouth wide open to an unnatural length, revealing nothing but a spiraling abyss. Red static took up the screen as I jumped out of my chair from this sudden action. The audio from his screech was shredding my speakers. My ears felt like they had ice picks being driven into them. I yelled and grabbed my ears as the red static screeched for an unbearable few seconds. All at once, it was over. The sound was gone. The screen was empty. I looked up from the floor. One last text came up. Ready for another round, Tom? There was no way. My name was on screen. It knew my name. The laugh, now sounding more clear, as if Sonic was right behind me, played again 3 times as I looked at the text in shock and confusion. Then it booted back to the main menu. This time, the third save file had a TV image, with Robotnik in the same tormented state as the other 2. His skin turned a dull gray. His mustache drooped and had become blackened. His glasses broke. Blood was leaking from them. He had a dead expression on his face. I looked at the 3, I could feel their pain, their sorrow. I pitied them for the agony they were going through. They were trapped within the game, forever tormented by that horrid creature pretending to be Sonic, and always would be. The computer shut itself off. I couldn't turn it back on no matter what I did. I sat there, completely lost and horrified by what had just happened. I couldn't get the disk out of my computer, but I did manage to turn it back on. I sat there for some time. I heard a voice behind me, like a whisper.
Try to keep this interesting for me.
It wasn't like the dream. I could tell it was behind me, a few feet away. With bated breaths, I turned around to find the source. My Sonic plushie I had since I was a kid, which was supposed to be on my dresser on the other side of the room, now sat on the bed. Eyes, no longer the white-colored fabric. Smile, no longer just a thin black line. Red stains under its eyes. I was one of his toys now.